Yes, I'm the guy who drew this bill. Okay, so we finally get to talk about something we've been working on and carrying out for the past year or so, the Harriet Tubman 20 project that we've been doing completely in secret from all of our regular listeners on the Liberator Podcast.
Sneaky.
Yeah. Unless there's any hardcore Easter egg hunters who saw any of these bills like on the shelves in the previous episodes of the Liberator.
Yeah, we've had moments like at the beginning of an episode where we're like,
oh crap!
Can you remove that big stack of $20 bills from the set? Someone's going to be on to us.
Yeah.
Of course, no one got on to us, but
yeah. So we have a $20 bill here, right, with Harriet Tubman, and we've been dropping these all over the place. It's been part of a big project we're working on.
500,000 went out into the culture.
Yeah. So just to, I guess, to preface what we're going to get to, right? We're going to get to what we did in Philadelphia about a week ago. Now, if you've been following our Facebook page, you will have seen Ben Zeisloff's article in the Daily Wire about what we just did in Philadelphia. We basically had a rally, brought a bunch of liberals and others, but mostly liberals, to a rally that was to support Harriet Tubman.
Yeah.
And then you showed them
the
real Harriet Tubman.
And some Free the States people who were just sort of like on Facebook, and a live video popped up, and they're like, hey, it's T-Russ yelling at people on the streets of Philadelphia about Harriet Tubman. What
the heck is this?
What is it? We didn't know where else to like kind of launch the video, so we did that.
Yeah.
And now we're going to go back and explain why.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Russell, talk about just the, for people who don't know much about this project, talk about the conception of it, and then we will get into kind of the nuts and bolts of kind of how this was executed by the abolitionist movement.
Yeah. So I'll try to be brief, but this is my bread and butter love, because it's like a history thing, it's an art thing, and it's the stuff that I would always rather be, just kind of doing. So back in 2016, many of you know Obama had basically said that he wanted to put a woman and a person of color on the $20 bill and replace Andrew Jackson. And the American people got behind the idea of putting Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill. I thought that was freaking fantastic, because Harriet Tubman was a born-again Christian who loved her neighbors as herself, gave up her life to help others. She was an immediate abolitionist. She loved that Second Amendment. She carried a gun, and she helped people to freedom. And so I was like, man, this is awesome. America's going to have an abolitionist on the $20 bill. I'm so stoked about this. But wait.
Why are you all stoked about this? You should be stoked about this.
I was like, Americans don't like Garrisonian abolitionists. Americans don't like immediatists. Do y'all know that Harriet Tubman? And then I'm like, well, maybe the Republicans will like her, because she was a Republican. Mm-hmm. It's like, wait, Republicans don't like immediate abolitionists? I mean, what's going? So I think that when that happened, and that was announced, I thought it was so awesome, because I was a big fan of Tubman's. But I said, wow, I would like to make a Tubman 20 that comes out before the real Tubman 20, and use it to try to engage people in our culture with the real Harriet Tubman, and through the real Harriet Tubman, the ideology of abolitionism and her faith as a Christian, and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. Right. So that was the nugget of the idea.
Yeah. So how did this get executed by the abolitionist movement? What have abolitionists been doing for the past year or so?
Yeah, so a lot of abolitionists have been involved.
Yeah, so thank you to everyone who donated to this, who's been out there dropping bills. Thank you to all of you, to the Human Art Tribe.
There's been a secret group page of people that basically, I went into the abolitionism group page and said, hey, who wants to participate in like one of those kind of secret street art activism things that we've done before? This isn't the first thing that we've done, and maybe we'll talk a bit about some of those other projects. But about 200 abolitionists said, "Yeah, I'm down. I'll be a part of this." And so I drew the bill and completed it by October 2020. We printed it. And we just began sort of sending out, 500 to this abolitionist, to 1,000 to this abolitionist, and all over the country.
Yep.
And those fine young men and women, filled their pockets with $20 bills, fake $20 bills, and just walked around in their cities and
dropped them everywhere,
littered. and then people found them, and they looked it up, and they studied the bill, and they went to Tubman20.com. Tubman20.com, and they could take a picture of the bill and register it. Hey, I found this bill, and they could sign our petition to support putting the real Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And so, we did that for about 10 months.
Yep. And the website that they were directed to talked a lot about Harriet Tubman. Now, the Tubman20 website has switched a little bit, and now it's about what we did in Philadelphia last week. But it was kind of a biographical thing about Harriet Tubman.
Yeah, all solid stuff.
Yep. Here's why she's awesome. We kind of emphasized, we didn't emphasize as much the things that we emphasize now. Now we're emphasizing immediate abolition, nullification, the gospel. But we were kind of obviously not wanting people to know what was going on yet. Yeah. And so we kind of just told them more.
The standard story.
Right. She's this awesome lady who rescued people, took people to freedom, all that sort of stuff.
And that we did, and we still do, believe that she is a much better example to be emulated than the 7th president of the United States of America, Andrew Jackson, who's currently on the $20 bill.
Yep.
Just real quick, just because people think, well, that sounds deceptive. It's not deceptive. We really do want Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill.
We never said a single thing that we don't believe. Even back when we were kind of hiding who we actually were, everything that we said on the old Tubman20 website, we believed every word of it.
Yeah. I mean, Andrew Jackson was he was a hater. He was an anti-abolitionist to the core. He was racist. He was a white supremacist. He was an Indian killer, and he was a federal tyrant. He's basically all the things to abolitionists like our current president is to us, And so, of course, we
and worse.
And worse. Yeah.
He's
Yeah, you can go online.
Oh, sorry. No.
I
was thinking Biden. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. He's worse than Biden, but I mean, he's worse than most any president in American history. Maybe he's on par with
Biden. I would say that.
Yeah. Well, Biden didn't have the Trail of Tears, but Biden does promote child sacrifice and want to make it a federal law and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And he is a wicked tyrant and so on and so forth. And we're not afraid to say that.
Andrew Jackson, I mean, you can find wanted posters that he put up for runaway slaves, and he would say, I'll give you this much money if you bring me back my slave, and I'll give you $10 extra, which back then is a lot of money with the inflation. I'll give you $10 extra for every lash that you put on that slave's back.
Yeah.
Right. And so just really to support chattel slavery is bad enough, but then just the sheer cruelty that really exceeded even most slave owners of the day.
Yeah.
Really, really bad dude. Obviously did the Trail of Tears as well.
Yeah.
And he was a federal tyrant, as you mentioned.
Tyrant.
He opposed states' rights, right? You had South Carolina and other states trying to nullify back in the 1830s when Jackson was president, to nullify for tax reasons, not related to anything with slavery, but trying to assert states' rights about taxes and tariffs and that sort of thing. And he said, nope, federal power always supersedes state power. And so you've got really bad guy in a lot of ways.
Yeah. On top of it all, he is, like many of y'all will know about the Dred Scott case and what a travesty that was. The Supreme Court basically ruled that black people were only fit to be property, couldn't gain their freedom in various ways. Yeah. Well, that was Roger Taney. He was the attorney general under Jackson and appointed, to the Supreme Court later. So, I mean, just a bad dude. And, so we did legitimately support the idea of removing a guy who stands for all the things that we fight against today from the bill and replacing him with someone who stands for all the things that we support today.
Yeah.
And so we weren't lying or deceiving. We're just saying, okay, America, this is something that we can really get behind. But do you know what you're supporting?
So let's get into the actual artwork of the bill, because I think it's really, really good. And I think people, when they see this, they're just like, holy cow, someone put in a lot of work on this.
Yeah.
What are the details on the bill? What are we looking at here?
No, we can't go through all of it because this episode would be hours and hours long. You can go to Tubman20.com and you can look at the bill. There's a high-res version there, and you can kind of look around. And, if you want to send me a question like, what does this mean? I'd be glad to try to answer it for you. But the basic idea was to put Harriet Tubman as she's popularly represented. She's usually represented with the lantern, which she probably never really carried a lantern. When you're traipsing about in the woods being pursued by slave catchers, you don't tend to carry lights with you. Mm-hmm. It's also clear from Harriet's own sort of speaking and stuff that was recorded that she traveled by moonlight. But I used that as a symbol of the Underground Railroad. And the gun, I wanted to make sure that I had her holding a gun, because I think that in our culture today, there's this conversation about guns' rights, whether we're going to have them. And I'm like, yeah, it seems to be okay if you're Harriet Tubman. So had her, because she did carry a gun. She used that to try to, protect herself and also keep people she was helping from running away.
Yep. Dead people tell no tales.
Yeah, dead people tell no tales.
Yep.
As Harriet kind of said.
Yes, she sort of said that.
She sort of said that. She said that in the way that she's allowed to say.
Yes, and she said that to prevent people who were joining her on the escape route. But then if a runaway slave wanted to turn back, that was a big risk to Harriet Tubman, because then that person they know the trail, they know the houses that they're staying at and all those details. And so you can't have people coming part way and then turning back. Yeah. And so she had a gun, and I think she actually pointed it straight at a guy one time and said...
She conveyed that she literally did have to put it in somebody's face.
Because it could mean, for a lot of people, serious jail time who are aiding, the slaves on the Underground Railroad and all kinds of things like that,
Which is a not so subtle reference to a fact about Harriet Tubman. Everything that she did was illegal. Like literally everything. She was a runaway slave.
Yeah.
Now, unlike many runaway slaves, Harriet became a rescuer of slaves. So she would return again to the South to rescue slaves, help them gain their freedom, and then go back and forth. Yeah. So Harriet Tubman was a very hardcore individual who, did break the law. And it was a very common saying on the Underground Railroad that we only have one real rule, and that is the golden rule, and that all laws that are contrary to the higher law of God ought to be defied. Mm-hmm. And so, I wanted to be very blatant about Harriet Tubman, so I didn't want to just put Harriet Tubman on there, like just her face. Harriet Tubman, the rescuer. Harriet Tubman, the give me liberty or give me death. Harriet Tubman, leaving the plantation, where you've got the guy... There are people that are like, oh no, not all plantation slave masters were cruel. Well, okay, that was common enough. So I've got a plantation there. I've got people working the fields. I've got people being whipped. People, being treated as chattel. She's leaving that and going back.
I think the actual picture of Harriet in this I really like it, just because if you look at the design for the bill on the 20, it's the much older version of Harriet after she was in her 90s or so, not during the time that she was actually doing this. So I think I think that's part of the reason people liked it so much.
Yeah, I don't know what the final bill is going to be that they actually do put out, if they ever do put it out. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to go with Harriet around the age that she, really was whenever she was out there doing the work that she was doing. Now, Harriet did serve into her old age as doing a lot of assistance work. But
what else do we have on the bill here?
So there's a bunch of little historical details about who was president when the Fugitive Slave Law was written, who was the Supreme Court Justice or the Attorney General at the time, Roger Taney. And of course, those are references to the person that Harriet Tubman is going to be replacing on the $20 bill, Andrew Jackson, that scoundrel president, who was the 7th president of the United States, the slave owner, the Indian killer, the anti-abolitionist, Andrew Jackson. So if you flip over to the back, we won't go into the back, but it really does, like what I'm wanting to show here is on one side, sort of this idea of the founding fathers of our nation being these great, benevolent, perfect, sort of called by God heroes, and then the whipped slave. And then in the middle, the burning building. So there's a lot of symbolism there above the never forget that we used to buy and sell black people. So you've got the auction block. So without going into great detail on that, one, the fact that we dropped this bill all over the United States of America and people didn't freak out about a burning building on the back of the bill is beyond me. But I guess because it seemed to them like Black Lives Matter or something. You know, it was immediately acceptable. But yeah, we've got the slaveholder holding the Constitution, which has the clause that was prohibiting helping slaves. And then you have the whip slave on the other side, and then the abolitionists in the middle who were persecuted for their beliefs that slavery ought to be abolished.
You got your sort of signature on here, the peace above a divided states of America.
Yep.
Yep.
Pretty much with every project, I always get the peace when there is no peace. But yeah, and then the Harriet Tubman never wound a snake, kill it.
Yep.
Man, there's just too much detail. It's like we couldn't really break it down, but there's a lot of stuff on there. Go to Tubman20.com to check out the bill.
Yep. And on that never wound a snake, kill it point, we're going to get to this later in the episode, but we're actually going to be putting out a never wound a snake, kill it t-shirt. That's going to be really sweet. And we got some artwork from that we're going to be giving away as well. But we'll get to that later in the episode.
Yeah.
Let's go to the burning of Pennsylvania Hall, because that is kind of where we did this whole thing, was at the spot where Pennsylvania Hall was burned. So abolitionists, about 200 of them had been dropping these bills all over the country for about 10 months. And then in, I guess July 28th of this year, about 33 of us went to Philadelphia to specifically hit Philadelphia. And I think we dropped a little over 100,000 bills just in about 4 days leading up to the event. And it has this newer one that we dropped in Philadelphia specifically, actually has a little bit about where we were going to be meet at the marker for Pennsylvania Hall at 3 p.m. on Sunday, August 1st, and all of that. And so we get people, a bunch of Philadelphians, to the historical marker for Pennsylvania Hall on Sunday, August 1st at 3 p.m. So talk about just the idea for this event, where everything was going to turn, and kind of how it all went down.
So Pennsylvania Hall is obviously no longer there. It was built in 1838 as a meeting place for abolitionists, where they could meet and discuss their views and debate the incrementalists and debate the colonizationists and so on and so forth. About 4 days after that building was opened, the good people of the city of brotherly love burned it to the ground. Not a very popular place to be an abolitionist. Now, that's something that we wanted to kind of prove, that whereas the culture thinks that they would have celebrated the abolitionist in the past, but our contention is if you're not celebrating the abolitionists of the present, it's very likely that you would not have celebrated them in the past. So the idea was that we would use that place, that city. Philadelphia was the city that Harriet Tubman fled to. Pennsylvania Hall and outside of maybe Boston, Philadelphia was sort of the hub of a lot of the abolitionists. Philadelphia was like the Norman of people are going to be mad about that, but no. But Philadelphia was Norman was Boston. You're right. Philadelphia's like Texas, but
keep it in.
Oh, rein it in. But no, we wanted to get a lot of folks out there just by saying, hey, like these became generally flyers. We printed an extra bunch of them for Philadelphia specifically with this sort of QR code and this invitation. And the idea was like, can we get like some people who see this and think, oh, that's awesome. I love Harriet Tubman. I want her on the $20 bill. There's a rally. I literally don't know anything about it, but I'll go. Can we get them to come, stand at attention, and then tell them about the real Harriet Tubman, and then see how they respond to that? So that's what we did.
Yeah. And it was it was kind of intimidating, honestly, to just getting there and just all the different things that we wanted to make sure happened, live stream and all that, and wondering whether Russell was going to be killed or not.
Yeah, it was. we didn't know what would happen if you gathered a whole bunch of people together for something, and then told them it was about abortion, and then challenged them not to be hypocrites. So we did do it knowing that in our current climate, there could have been
popular.
There could have been violence. We weren't expecting them to burn us, but we were fully prepared and ready to suffer blows.
Yeah, I think we kind of wanted to see both reactions. Partly, we were like, yeah, we want to have really good conversations with these people. We want to change their minds. We want to give them the gospel. But there is going to be inevitably people who really hate us for this, and that's just going to go to show that they're not like the abolitionists of the past.
Yeah,
they are the people who are just going along with the beliefs of the age. And discriminating against their preborn neighbor, just like the anti-abolitionists discriminated against their black neighbor.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about what you said at the rally.
Yeah. So
and people can go to Tubman20.com or our YouTube channel if you want to watch the Free the States YouTube channel if you want to watch the whole thing. But give the viewers just kind of the gist of the flow of your presentation.
We will be putting it out in a sort of documentary form,
right?
Because the idea was to say these things and capture the way that people responded. But the general argument being that, hey, we love Harriet Tubman, we support her today, but let's think about who she was, what she believed, why she did what she did, and the fact that it wasn't popular and that most people persecuted her and her abolitionists, and that, you know, it was not constitutional, it was not lawful, it was not popular, and that we think it's popular today is crazy. And then to sort of say, it's like a cause today that is not popular, is not, you know, something that, you know, you get applauded for, you get sort of called a fanatic and ignored and yelled at and slandered and so on and so forth. I'm talking about the movement to abolish abortion. And we had about 80 people there, and you're like looking at everybody from where I'm at, I'm looking at everybody, and it was a really cool crowd because, you know, like half of the people were black and half of the people were white, and they were all standing together. And you know, you can kind of profile people, and you kind of know what a progressive kind of looks like.
Yeah.
Like I'm looking at some of the like white ladies, like Karen liberals or whatever, and I'm like, that's a meme waiting to happen. You know, it's like the moment I say abortion, her face is going to melt or I'm going to get bum rushed. But so I'm like looking out, and whenever I basically had said the abolitionists of slavery were not popular, they were not appreciated by their culture, they were ignored or they were hated, and that's like abolitionists of abortion today, or however I did it in the speech. You have to watch it. It was like immediately, like all the white progressive, like liberal looking folks were just offended. Like they had just been sinned against. They were like amening. They were like, yeah, that's right, I would have been with the abolitionists, and like just, you know, kind of listening along.
Yeah.
But the minute I said abortion, there was just sort of like this exodus of like white people. And so it was like the crowd went from like a nice homogenous mix of American culture to just, you know, open-minded, thoughtful folks that happen to be, you know, black. And then, you know, there, of course, some of our folks mixed in.
Yeah.
But,
well, it was really cool because a lot of the black, I don't know if there's a single white person who actually hung around until afterwards, but there were.
Yeah, there's one.
One or two.
Well, a couple. There's the reporter from the Philadelphia Inquirer. He was a white dude.
Well, there's another guy that was white, but he was from a foreign country, so he wasn't.
He was.
I don't think he had
he
the
wasn't
sort
white
of
American.
Yeah, he didn't have the American sort of hatred for.
He's like, when you go to a rally,
dialogue,
you hear what the person's saying, and you don't just like leave in the middle of it.
Yeah.
But we did have the standard groups of, you know, like there was like a family that left, and there were, you know, just people. But
but the black people hung around afterwards, right? And they asked you to sign their bills. And and the documentary that Nathan Weiser, who did a really good job capturing what was going to happen or what did happen, and is going to produce a documentary on that we're really excited about. He's going to capture a lot of the conversations of, you know, of these black people who hung around afterwards and were very, very intrigued, who were not put off by it.
Yeah.
Right? It was the white liberals who were put off by it and exited. Yeah. But these black people hung around, were very intrigued by it, wanting to talk more about the gospel, about abortion, about abolitionism and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so that was very encouraging that there was it resonated. It resonated.
It resonated, and they got it.
When you talk about the faith of Harriet Tubman, most black Americans are going to be like, yeah, amen. Like, you know, like that's not something controversial to them.
Yeah.
Whereas the secular liberal, God-hating liberal, white liberal is like, no, don't talk about our Christianity. Leave that out of it.
Yeah.
And so you spend a lot of time talking about our Christianity and talking about all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And to that, you could look around that crowd and see like most of the people who were like,
you could feel it. Like there was like I think black folks in the crowd were kind of like still tracking with the Harriet Tubman was this serious Christian. But you could definitely see on the faces of some folks kind of like, why is this? Because it was before we even went into abortion. I was going to talk about, and I just said something like, hey, I can't leave this out. This is who Harriet Tubman was. She was a very serious Christian. And so I think people were kind of like, okay, I'm willing to listen to this because it's historical.
Yeah.
Harriet Tubman was a Christian. I just have to deal with that. But then when I connected it to her abolitionism, that's, they left. But what I was going to say is that a lot of the folks that I talked to afterwards, it was incredible because it's kind of, some of them would be like, listen, I don't really know what I think fully about abortion, but I do think the argument you're making is right. Like it wasn't hard for anyone. Like everyone is like, slavery was constitutional. It wasn't popular to oppose it. The people who opposed it were Christians. That's all factual and true. Oh my gosh, today abortion is considered constitutional. It's not popular to oppose it, and all you guys are Christians. Wow, this is the same. I actually saw in the Wonket article there was someone who made that. They said, "Hey guys, let's be honest. Let's just admit it. He's right." Like he called us pro-life, which I find offensive and stupid. But he said if you took all these pro-life dudes and put them in the 19th century, they probably all would be abolitionists. Because you're like serious, hardcore Christian people looking for a cause in the 19th century stood up for the slaves.
Yeah.
That's what they do today.
What was really interesting for some of the reactions that we got just online was people looking at it and making the pro-slavery arguments of the 18th century, basically saying, oh, the Bible doesn't say anything about slavery and that kind of thing, making the slavery arguments, and then us just having to reiterate all the abolitionist arguments that are like, no, this is what Scripture says. It was interesting because it's like they're showing their hatred for Tubman in their response to us using Tubman. They're mad that we're using Tubman.
They come on and they bash Christianity, like in the comments of our video or of the other articles about what we did. And it's like, you think you're going after us. You're exposing that you're nothing like Harriet Tubman.
Yeah. You are the people who hate
perfect.
her.
Yeah. I mean, they just fell right into the trap and demonstrated
Harriet
exactly
would slap
what we're
you
saying.
if she had the opportunity.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting because we had both responses. Like, I think the predicted response was that the whole group would be like, whenever I went to abortion. But really, it was like half of them, and it just happened. I mean, we're just telling the truth. We're not making a statement here. The white people were offended and left, dropping F-bombs and throwing the bird. And, one of the young white ladies left, went and got in her moped and drove back and forth honking while we were standing out there. But for whatever reason, all the black folks sat around and talked. They were like, and we talked about it, and we handed out abolitionist pamphlets and quad folds, and we even got out abolitionist signs and did street work.
Yeah.
But it was weird that it seemed all acceptable. Like, I'm willing to hear what you're saying about the abolition of abortion because you prefaced it with 20 minutes of abolition of slavery stuff.
Well, it's
never worked before.
I think so. We've heard it said a lot, and it's correct to say that secularists and atheists, they borrow capital from the Christian worldview.
Right.
Well, they do the same thing with Christian heroes. Like when you have people who are long past dead and they were very devout Christians, they will borrow that capital, those people, from the Christian worldview and turn them into something that they're not. And act as though those principles just came out of thin air, like it came from their secularism, like they're not recipients of some kind of cultural heritage in the battles that have been won in the past.
Right.
But they just pretend it just got to them somehow.
And it's a major problem, especially with the abolitionists of slavery. Like there's no, whenever you really look into a guy like Garrison, who's got, everybody fighting for him, the man's actual letters, in his speeches and his, things that wouldn't even be known are just filled with scripture. It's clear, like he's drawing from the prophets. Douglas, Harriet Beecher Stowe. I mean, like different abolitionists with different stuff. What can't be denied is that they were seriously moved by belief that God hated slavery and that people were made in the image of God.
Yeah.
And so our secular culture
hated the form of slavery that was being practiced.
Hated chattel race-based slavery.
Yeah.
But they would do that, and they were very upfront about it. And then today, whether you're talking about PBS or history professors or whatever, they do whatever they can to kind of secularize these people, or like modern atheist agnostic groups will try to own them. Like there's like somebody who tried to like argue that William Wilberforce was an atheist once, and when he was an atheist, that's where he got his abolitionism, and he retained that even though he became a Christian. I'm like, come on, like people try to do this, and so setting the record straight about the heroes like of each major social justice reform type movement throughout history. They've always been hardcore followers of Jesus Christ. Like it's very rare that unbelievers sort of like wake up and love their neighbors as themselves in a big, massive movement. I know some people are going to be mad about that, but that's just true. I want to point it out.
And maybe that's this is a good place to sort of transition to the secondary purpose of all of this as well, because we're talking about Harriet Tubman, who was the nullifier of fugitive slave laws, who was not listening to tyrants on places where they were wrong. And a lot of the people, like in the Daily Wire and people that are commenting on that, they loved it, and we're glad they loved it, but we're ultimately saying as well, Harriet's not like you either. You need to go further. You need to say, we need to defy the Supreme Court. We need to not be compromising with it.
Yeah.
Because that's the way Harriet was.
Yeah. And that's a secondary thing that's going to come out in the documentary and in subsequent stuff. A lot of people, you bring up the Daily Wire. I looked at the Daily Wire article. This we're filming this the day after the Daily Wire article.
And that's written by a solid dude. Ben Zeisloft is legit.
The article is written great. It's got great information in it, but you look through the comments and it's like 95% just really positive. Ben Shapiro's account shared it. Matt Walsh's account shared it. Like it seems to be a very popular, it's in their top 10 articles today, even the second day. And so it's like, okay, whereas the progressives shouldn't really identify with Harriet Tubman, maybe neither should your modern sort of conservatives, because modern conservatives are pro-lifers who believe that the way to fight abortion is through the Supreme Court, not in defiance of the Supreme Court. That's contrary to what Harriet Tubman believed. They also believe that you should do it incrementally. You got to compromise a little bit along the way. That's something that Harriet Tubman fundamentally rejected. And so even the conservatives who's like, oh, this is epic. You trolled some liberals and you told them, Harriet Tubman doesn't belong to you. She belongs to us. We're like, well, we're kind of trolling you now. Because Harriet Tubman doesn't actually belong to you.
That
she belongs to us.
Her most famous quote is people use it all the time, and not even thinking about it or the context, but it's never wound a snake, kill it. And that was to Lincoln.
Or about Lincoln.
Most people think about Lincoln, and their kind of view of him is very distorted as well. They kind of think Lincoln was the hero of that day. He was the guy who ended slavery and did all this. With immense pressure from people who are telling him to be consistent and to stop compromising with slavery, like Tubman, who was telling him.
Lincoln had to be agitated by Garrisonians. When I say Garrisonians, for those of you who don't, it's just immediate abolitionists. But Harriet, whenever the Emancipation Proclamation came out, which was freeing the slaves in the South as a war measure, in discussion with another abolitionist, I believe Lucretia Mott, she basically had said, this isn't going to work. God is ahead of Master Lincoln, and he's not going to allow him to win this war until Lincoln has resolved to abolish slavery. And at that time, Lincoln was still sort of like, preserve the Union, and if we have to do slavery, okay. But Lincoln did eventually switch, and when he switched, he said, yes, I knew that I had to end slavery totally, and I had to do it. And it was because of, even Lincoln himself credited the Garrisonian abolitionist.
Yeah. And so in America, we've got, Republican pro-life leaders saying, no, don't abolish abortion immediately. We've got to submit to the Supreme Court. We've got to be slow and methodical because that's just how political change happens. You're naive, or you don't know, how politics works if you just say, well, just abolish it, right? We're naive for wanting to abolish abortion immediately. We're, kind of anarchists or whatever for saying defy the Supreme Court. And when they do that, when the pro-life leaders say stuff like that, whether it's Klusendorf or Van Maren or whomever it is, National Right to Life, they're arguing against the principles that Harriet Tubman most fiercely stood for.
Yeah.
Right? Immediate abolition in defiance of the federal government.
Yeah.
These are firm principles of the abolitionists of slavery, and they were right.
Yeah.
And there were people, and this goes back to kind of episode 3, if you want to go into Russell's kind of whole origin story for the abolitionist movement. But you had people in Harriet Tubman's day who were saying the same thing the pro-life leaders are saying today.
Yep.
We've got to go slow. You can't bring about change, too quickly. People were saying it in to Wilberforce in Britain. They were saying it to Tubman and Douglas and Garrison here in America. And that's the pro-life leaders.
Yep.
That's who they're the heir to.
Mm-hmm.
They're the heir to the gradualists who opposed Harriet Tubman.
Yeah. And when I say like the PBS documentary, there was a documentary that came out a few years ago called The Abolitionist, and it highlighted 5 abolitionists, and they were all basically immediatists. There was a little variation among them, most notably John Brown, who sort of gave up. He thought that the culture wasn't going to repent, and then believed that he was, the judgment of God. So, I'm not claiming him entirely. That's between him and God and in history. But you look at that PBS documentary series where particularly William Lloyd Garrison, Frederick Douglass, Harriet Beecher Stowe, and Angelina Grimke are being sort of highlighted as these heroes who were right when everybody else was wrong. Mm-hmm. Like whatever areas they were right or wrong in personally and themselves in different ways, they were right on slavery and the culture was wrong. And you see in that documentary series that it wasn't just the pro-slavery people that opposed them, but it was all these moderate anti-slavery people who at the time probably saw themselves as not moderate, but as wise, as careful, as legitimate,
pragmatic, prudent.
Yeah.
And they hated and they opposed, I think the does more harm than good slogan was first used about William Lloyd Garrison.
Yeah.
Yep.
That guy does more harm than good people.
The honest simplicity of all of it is just they were actually loving their neighbors as they loved themselves. Like when you look at the praise that they got, like Wendell Phillips, when people would like praise him as being someone who is consistent, they would say that he treated a black person no different than he treated any white person. With the same degree of respect and he would. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he would just treat them like a human being. Yeah. And that was shocking at the time. Like, that's not something people did because they didn't see them as their neighbors.
Then that was the thing. The abolitionist approached slavery from the perspective of the golden rule. Like, do unto others as you would have done unto you. Mm-hmm. Like, treat them like you would want to be treated. Mm-hmm. And, also in Philadelphia on August 1st, the day we did this, happened to be my birthday, and some abolitionists got together and they purchased for me some old abolitionist stuff. And one of the things that I got in this lot was it was a newspaper that had a front page story about a breakfast that was being done for Garrison. And it was, what's funny is he was in England, and when he got there, the people were like, "You're William Lloyd Garrison?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, they're like, "We thought you were black." And he was like, he took it as a compliment, and they said,
he said it's the best compliment I've ever received.
And it wasn't because he was like some racist against white people.
Mm-hmm. Well, you went to that one banquet, and they're like, "Wait, we thought you were pre-born."
Yeah, that's never gonna happen.
Just kidding.
But the "we thought you were black" thing, because he said, I have always approached slavery as a evil to be abolished, not from the perspective that some slaves are whipped or some slaves are worked to death or are all these like kind of abuses of it, but from the perspective of, would I want my wife to go up on the auction block and be sold away from me as the product of another man, or my children? I've always thought about the slaves as though I were them. And so like it was that perspective, and so he really liked the fact that
because that's a horror movie right there. That's like when you think about it as like I am, if I put myself in their shoes, then that is like the premise of just the most despicable movie you've ever seen. And with the preborn, it's like people that are being torn limb from limb today, we're trying to think about them consistently. Like how would
place yourself in that situation. Say you were the preborn child conceived in rape. Would you want the Christian church saying, well, we'll allow you to be destroyed so long as we can save these other people? Well, of course not. Say you're the preborn child who was placed precariously at some point in the fallopian tube and you may or may not live. Well, would you like the default position be just to scrape you out of the womb, or would you like them to watch, wait, and pray and let you perish in the providence of God, or survive and be early delivered? Like, think about the preborn in these different circumstances, whether they're difficult circumstances, the exceptions that pro-lifers approve of, or just the regular preborn child. Put yourself in their place and write laws accordingly. And 8.5% of the culture says we're insane. And that's the same in the days of slavery about the immediate abolitionist. So to get back to the point, we are kind of trolling. Is trolling the right word? We are kind of doing a thing where right now we are letting conservatives celebrate the bill and think, they stuck it to those progressives. And here on the Liberator Podcast, we're saying, and we're also sticking it to you.
Gently, patiently,
lovingly.
We want you to come over to this side. And unfortunately, I saw a lot of people in those comment sections on the Daily Wire saying, enough compromise with this. We need to end it now.
That was incredible.
Yeah. And I think it's just a testament to how much it has been seeping into the culture over the past few years. It's not, because a lot of people just want to think, pro-lifers are already sort of there. They're already sort of in the camp of, they're sort of abolitionist minded. But that's not really true. Like, I've worked for a pro-life organization for 5 years. That's not where they're at generally. There are some folks out there who, when they say pro-life, they think abolition of abortion. But that's super rare. Most of them think some kind of gain as much ground as you can when you can by whatever means. You got to kind of compromise, maybe some exceptions. That's the predominant view. And I think the view that we should consider and call pro-life, not just industry, but pro-life individual. But a lot of those pro-life individuals themselves, if they are challenged just a little bit to say, okay, let's think about abortion consistently, uncompromisingly, and that be the way that we abolish it, I think they can be like, I'm with you. But they're not going to be with us without us challenging them. So the idea here and now is to say, yes, Harriet Tubman, she was right. She was right in defying the Supreme Court. She was right in disobeying the federal fugitive slave laws. She was right in joining the Garrisonians and calling for total and immediate abolition. She was right in criticizing Abraham Lincoln whenever he preferred colonization and gradualism. She was right. We all know that today. That was not popular. Today, you are wrong whenever you criticize us for saying total and immediate abolition, defy the Supreme Court. Any law that says that it's okay to murder an image bearer of the living God is an unjust law that ought not to be followed. But that is the unpopular position. But it is the position that they will make PBS documentaries about in 150 years.
Yeah. And so we did this project, right, to get out these principles of defying tyrants, of immediate abolition, and of the gospel. And so that's what we've been promoting. Those are the things you talked about in your speech in Philadelphia, and that's what the Tubman20.com website is going to continue to promote from here on out. And so we've got a documentary coming along those lines.
Hopefully out soon. Now, a documentary also, there's the long-awaited Liberator Lessons series that we're going to do, which is going to be much more historical in nature, didactic in nature. The Tubman 20 project and the thing we did in Philadelphia is not sort of the end point for the project, but the launching point for a bunch of stuff coming down the wire from Free the States.
And so this project was for the purpose of promoting these principles, right, which are very much against the current culture. These principles, of nullification, of nullifying evil and unconstitutional federal edicts, of immediatism, of not compromising with evil, of setting a righteous standard and bidding the culture to come meet that standard, and then, of course, the gospel that so animated Harriet Tubman. And so that's what we have shifted to on the Tubman 20 website, and that's what we're going to continue to promote going forward, including, as we mentioned earlier in this podcast, the creation of a documentary about the project that we have just done. Yeah. So talk a bit about what the plan for that is, Russell.
So the documentary will have sort of like footage of our engagement, our conversations with different folks in Philadelphia, just regular people that we met on the streets, people at the abortion mills, people like tourists, police officers, all sort of like interwoven into the speech that I was given to sort of prove the point that I was making. And then also probably just some general information on Harriet Tubman, nullification, immediatism, gospel, the kingdom stuff. Nathan Weiser is producing that documentary right now. We don't have a fast and firm date for when that's going to be out. So what you really want to do is, one, you want to be signed up with our email, because we will email that out as soon as that's out. You can go to freethestates.org, just fill out our contact form. But of course, we will launch it on our YouTube page. So you want to be subscribed to our YouTube channel, because that's where we will sort of put it up and you'll get the notification about that. But it'll be something that you don't want to miss. And again, it will be something that we are jumping off from. This will probably be sort of the first of a series of videos that we begin to do that are more centered on engaging the culture in general about abolition, nullificationism, immediatism, the gospel, and not just what we've been primarily focused on for the past couple of years, the legislatures. But at the same time, we will be continued to focus on the legislatures. But we've got more staff, we've got more people, and we got more people funding us. So now we're able to do more things.
Yeah. And just to reiterate that, it is very important that you are subscribed to our YouTube channel. There's a lot of good content, even beyond the podcast, that we put up there, and that's going to be where the documentary is. You do not want, trust me, you don't want to miss that documentary. It's a lot of good stuff was filmed, like interviews with you, kind of at the auction block location, where Harriet Tubman was saving people from, and it's literally right across the street from a church that was there even at the time. And so lots of really good stuff is going to be in this documentary. And so seriously, if you are not subscribed to the Free the States YouTube channel, go to youtube.com right now, type in Free the States, hit subscribe, and make sure you are not missing the documentary that will be to come very, very shortly.
And just one other note on this: most of this whole project was for the most part is possible because of a lot of volunteer work from abolitionists who came in, who just believe in the stuff that we're doing, and who really just gave financially, and they were on the boots on the ground working on this stuff. So they oftentimes are the ones who just fund this whole project. But when you fund Free the States, it makes it a lot easier on the people who are supporting us, the people who are really putting in a lot of the work, because then financially it's not as much of a burden on them, and we're able to do more of these kinds of projects. This is not the last time we're going to do something like this, and this is not the first time we've done something like this. So if you think this project was worthwhile, it's teaching the culture, it's doing all these things that we're talking about, especially after watching the documentary, consider becoming a monthly supporter to help do this work, because we need supporters. We need people that are in this with us.
And plug in with us so that the next time we do something like this, we can have more than 100 folks doing it, but 1,000 folks doing it, because we are going to be increasingly. It's just like kind of ending on this, but it's been a particular conviction of mine as of late that we are not, as even a movement, the abolitionist movement, really waking up and living like we live in a culture where 3,000 little image bearers are being taken away to death. It seems like there's a sort of general tolerance and almost just sort of like apathy even among those of us, where we're not being as big of a problem as we ought to be. Like we ought to be constantly coming up with ways of showing the culture its sin. We ought to be constantly coming up with ways of challenging compromise, of challenging tolerance, apathy, indifference, and all these things. I just don't think that we are being the kinds of pains that we ought to be in our culture's big, fat, apathetic butt. So we are going to start trying to come up with more cultural engagement materials. We're going to be coming up with more videos, material that you can share, but hopefully projects that you can participate in. And we will actively try to recruit you into getting out in the streets. Yes, we do want your financial support, but we don't just want your financial support. Sometimes that's all you can do. We understand that and we appreciate you, but we do want all Christians everywhere to live like people are dying, because they are, or live like people are being murdered. And so to that end,
on that note, I don't think that was planned at all, but on that note, we just created a new quadfold that is very good along those lines. Just kind of exposing that abortion is murder. Everybody knows it's murder. And so this is actually it's got the artwork from the drop card, the abortion is murder and everyone knows it drop card. And then you open it, and the first open just kind of quotes from pro-abortion doctors saying, everyone knows life begins at conception. It's no longer a matter of taste or opinion. It's plain experimental evidence. Everyone knows life begins at conception if you graduated 6th grade biology, right? It's a fact. Abortion supporters saying, yep, we know it's killing, but we defend it anyway. Everyone knows it's the killing of a human being. You open it up, it's got a picture of an abortion victim, and saying basically, this is murder. Stop suppressing that truth because you love your sin, and then all that kind of building toward the back, which is a gospel presentation. Because the gospel is the answer to this evil of abortion. So this is the new quadfold from Free the States. If you are a street activist at all, this is a very good resource that hopefully you guys will take advantage of using. You can get this at the Free the State store. That is store.freethestates.org. Pick up some of these. Really good resource for agitating and educating a culture that hates God and loves child sacrifice.
And this is the kind of financial support that we get the most excited about. When you go and you buy a big old stack of these, we're like, it's not just a person who's giving us money for this kind of thing. It's a person who's going to be going out there and seeding the culture with the ideas of abolition and presenting the gospel to people. And that's, to us, is like, we love that.
It's encouraging. The more desire there is for materials, for the streets, for the schools, for the mills, for the churches, like wherever people think I need material that I can share in this context, if we can produce it at a high quality and get it to you for an affordable price, we're going to do that. So we are greatly encouraged by people getting out there on the streets and using these things.
And that's one of the differences between the abolition movement and the pro-life movement. The pro-life movement comes along and they're like, well, give financially to us and we're just going to lift this burden and responsibility off of your head. This will be your contribution to the preborn. And with any abolitionist organization like ourselves, we're saying we want more from you. We're calling the church to repent. We're laying this responsibility on you. It's not just a matter of what you give financially. It's a matter of what are you doing day to day, knowing that your preborn neighbor is dying. Consider it in light of what you do for others. If this was your 2-year-old daughter, what would you do? And we know that it'd be more than what the pro-life movement even asks of you. So, and that's, this is all part of it. And we love it when people buy the pamphlets because they're supporting us financially, but we know they're out doing the work.
And we are trying to make it pretty darn easy. I mean, we've got street signs with murdered children on them for those who are willing to go stand on street signs. But a lot of the drop cards and even this quadfold is something you can buy and literally just leave places when you go to the gas pump, when you go to the grocery store, whenever you just go through the drive-through, you can just hand it to somebody. I mean, there's a lot of like easy sort of it's good to engage people one-on-one, but it's also good to leave things around in the providence of God. I mean, there are people who are hardcore abolitionists. One of the guys who was helping us on this project came into the movement because he got a quadfold outside of a church. And so material can be used by God to really wake people up. And so that's why we're producing these things. And also to that end, we are coming out with a couple of new shirts. And one of the new shirts is going to be a Harriet Tubman connected shirt. It's going to be a never wound a snake, kill it shirt. Here is the way it looks, as Sam
superimposes
this PNG right here.
Yeah.
And, that's the front. And then on the back, it says abortion must be abolished, not regulated, with assorted abolitionist symbols standing for immediate and total abolition. Tubman 20 URL. This shirt is now available for pre-order on the Free the States store. Again, that's store.freethestates.org. Yep. Mm-hmm. You can also just get to that through links and through the button on our website.
If you just go to freethestates.org, you'll find it pretty quick.
Yeah.
And along that same lines, that is also the art we are giving away this month, right, on the podcast.
Yeah. So you may be looking at this and kind of judge me because it's a little less sophisticated than some of the other art that I've been doing. I've had the privilege to give away a lot of this art for the Tubman bills to the people that have kind of supported that project financially. But this month's, is it how many episodes from now?
Probably 3 episodes from now.
3 episodes from now. I'm going to go against my long time opposition to signing my artwork. Like I'd never sign the artwork, but I'm going to start signing it because people started telling me that they were kind of mad when we send them the artwork and they're like, you didn't sign it. I'm like, well, because I'm nobody, but okay, I'll sign it. I'm going to start signing it. And this month's piece of art, this is the snake that was used in the production of the Never Wound a Snake design for the t-shirt. And so we will be giving this away. It's a pen and ink drawing, and we will be sending that signed and all. You will have the piece of art that led to the hundreds of thousands of people who are wearing this shirt in your possession. If you are.
Yeah.
Hundreds
of millions of billions of people.
We're going to cut it off. We're only going to make 100,000 of the Harriet Tubman shirt. That's all we're selling. Mm-hmm. So get it quick. But no, to be entered into the drawing for a drawing, you need to be a monthly supporter or a big donor of Free the States, helping us do what we do.
So anyway, in that closing, there were a lot of things being pitched there. So let's just recap real quick. Make sure you go and subscribe to the YouTube so you do not miss the documentary.
Pause video, do that.
That is soon to be released on the Free the States YouTube channel. Number 2, if you're not already a donor, please become a monthly supporter of Free the States.
We appreciate you.
Go to freethestates.org, and there's a little red donate button up in the top right. You can become a monthly donor there. Number 3 is the t-shirt. Number 3 is the quad fold. So if you are a street activist or want to be an activist,
if you are a soccer mom who believes in the immediate abolition of abortion and that the gospel is the answer, get a couple of these and just leave them on the grass at the next game.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And so that's number 3. Number 4 is the t-shirt. And so the new Tubman 20 t-shirt that's going to be, by the time this podcast airs, is going to be available for pre-order at store.freethestates.org.
Ooh,
so
and that's 5 bonus. If you are a member of Free the States, get a 15% discount in the store.
That's true.
For all of the aforementioned
And that's for
things.
Anyone that gives $25 a month or more.
Yeah. So if you give $24.50. So thank you for listening to this. We will probably have more to say about this particular project after the documentary released. We just wanted to do a quick, just get home, talk about a little bit about what we did and why, so that people were not in the dark. Go look at Ben Zeisloff's article from the Daily Wire. Yep. Share that with some folks, and you can from there get a link and look at the video and everything like that. Yep. So do we have an official sign off?
We do. So this has been the 52nd episode of the Liberator Podcast, where we're committed to being as harsh as truth and as uncompromising as justice. We'll see you next week.